At first, it's very hard to win an election when you haven't got candidates. And in a slew of seats across New South Wales, that's as much the bigger problem for the PM than stroppy text messages that are now 2 years old. Just 8 weeks before an election has to be called, there are still no Liberal candidates in the vital seats of Hughes, currently held by former Liberal Craig Kelly, in Warringah, once a blue ribbon Liberal seat, Bennelong, where the respected MP John Alexander is retiring, and Dobell and Parramatta, just the sort of battler seats where Morrison might expect to do well. So why not? What's the problem? Well, yesterday the Prime Minister said that it was factions playing what he called childish games and threatened federal intervention into the New South Wales division of the Liberal Party.
It is very frustrating, and there's some childish games going on there. People who play games in politics rather than and can often forget what it's all about.
But it's not that simple, is it, PM? Back in 2017, to end years of factional string pulling, rank and file members of the New South Wales Liberal Party voted overwhelmingly for democratic reform, for pre-selections where every bona fide local party member would get to vote on who should be the local Liberal candidate. Local Liberals voting for their local Liberal. The idea was that giving hundreds of members a say would make pre-selections much harder for the factional bosses to manipulate, and that empowering members would encourage more Liberal voters to actually join the Liberal Party and to have their say. And we saw the result of more democratic pre-selections recently in the state seat of Willoughby, where a long-term party member, former Howard staffer, former boss of Medicines Australia and executive at the Menzies Research Centre, unexpectedly beat the factional favourite. You see, internal democracy is the last thing the factional bosses want on both sides of the political fence, which is why they're always trying to sabotage it. In New South Wales, rank and file Liberals have wanted to be campaigning for months, to be out there door knocking and doing their best to support the PM. And for months, branch presidents have been petitioning the state executive to get cracking with democratic pre-selections for those federal seats. After all, what's the point of bringing in democratic reform if it's novel before the first start? But that's basically what's happened with democratic rank and file pre-selections blocked, largely by the Prime Minister's own representative, Immigration Minister Alex Hawke, who himself heads one of the factions, claiming that he's just too busy to vet prospective candidates. Rather than let local party members choose the candidates, his plan was to put off pre-selections for so long that head office's preferred candidates could be just parachuted in at the last minute by a state executive. Now, it's true that with 4 state by-elections to win in a couple of weeks' time and a federal election to prepare for, the New South Wales Liberal Party machine has got a lot on its plate and could do without having to organise big events to choose candidates. That's why it should have been done months ago, not put off till 1 minute to midnight, because string pullers in Canberra didn't want to be inconvenienced by democracy, and they thought better than local party members. Of course, in our debased political culture, dominated by focus group obsessed operatives, it's not just the Liberal Party members in New South Wales who are being taken for granted. Thousands of Labor Party members here in Victoria have been totally disenfranchised by a Stalinist premier via a federal takeover of the state branch. Yet how can we have a flourishing democracy if the political parties that are central to it and that should exercise the quality control of candidates that voters expect have all but become factional fiefdoms or insider clubs? Immigration Minister Hawke, well, he's just punted Novak Djokovic from Australia on the basis that he didn't comply with our vaccination rules. Yet here's the same minister flouting the New South Wales Liberal Party's rules in order to pull a swiftie on the rank and file membership. And as for the PM claiming that childish games are being played, it's his own representative on state executive who's in the thick of it.